Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar entitled 5 Audience Monetization Ideas for 2016. My name is Brett Kierstead. I'm Senior Vice President of Sales and Operations for Knowledge Marketing, and I'm excited to share with you guys our first webinar of the new year. Those of you that are new, this is a monthly series that we put on around relevant topics to the publishing and media industry. So we're glad to have you here. For those of you who do have questions, please submit them through the GoToWebinar question box, and we'll try to get them along the way. We do have a poll question here coming up, so please pay attention for that. And we'll typically try to go about 40 minutes, depending on the nature of how things flow. But again, we're excited to have you here. So just a little bit for those of you who are new to knowledge marketing, I'll be quick. We focus on providing technologies and services to the publishing and media industry around 5 major strategies: audience unification, email strategy and how you guys deliver out content through email, the modernization strategies that's going on around the circulation function, capturing behavioral engagement online in different places, as well as our emphasis on empowering media sales success. So with that background and a list of our customers, hopefully you'll see the places that we get our ideas, the successes that we have. We continue to be a healthy, growing business providing services to this industry, and again, we're really glad to have you here. Today, we're going to, again, talk a little bit about audience data monetization, and it's a word that has been thrown around continuously now for multiple different years, and a lot of folks have been taking the initiative to do something about it. You know, usually when new ideas come about, they're a tagline or a consultant says something or somebody does something, and then eventually that initiative becomes mainstream. So what we're doing today is we're going to talk specifically about what it is and how you guys can move forward in 2016 to make money. So let's talk about it and make sure we're all on the same page. When we talk about audience data within a publisher, I've said this many times, and for those of you who have been repeat folks that have been here, you'll know that data is really driving a lot of strategies for how publishers are making money. From a historical perspective, a lot of organizations, especially as you have grown and diversified out of print or made acquisitions or added new content channels, the data associated with that activity has become disparate. And there's a challenge with the disconnectedness of all that information to get it into one place. So this is a typical profile of the way internal data assets are for publishers, and what they're looking to do and have been doing over the past several years is organizing them. So organizing data into a unified audience is what everyone talks about as a desired goal. And different companies here are in different stages of this, and so we want to make sure that we're all level set here. The terminology that you'll hear me use during the day, just for references, is demographic data, behavioral data, and contextual data. And the reason why it's important to understand these things is each one of them represents the potential for differentiated value add. You know, every piece of information that exists out there is worth a differing amount. And we're going to talk about how capturing and using that data can change your sales messaging, your economic model, and how you do various different things. So again, this is the stated goal of what organizations are looking to do. So I'm going to ask you a question just here to kind of get things started. And it really is fairly straightforward. If this is the goal, meaning to move disparate data from disorganized sources into a common place, the question is, where do you stand? Are you done it? You know, you're here on this webinar because you've done this and you're looking for new ideas now that you have it, or you haven't done it, you're still evaluating it, and you're kind of thinking of this as a strategy, and maybe this is part of the justification for whether or not this is a good idea. So either A, yes, we've done it, or B, we haven't, or we're thinking about it. So a few more seconds, and then we'll close the poll and we'll go from there. So again, we've done it or we haven't. We'll keep it simple. Okay, so I'll close that poll, and it's funny, the actual response is 68% of the folks have already done it, or are starting to monetize the data, and 32% are in progress. And it's exciting to hear that because, frankly, over the past couple of years, that trend has been changing. It used to be that no one did it, and now lots of folks have done it. So 2/3 of the folks on here are looking for, they have the asset and they're looking for new ideas, and 1/3 are still trying to figure out whether this is the right thing to do. I want to give you guys one little disclaimer before I get started here. I've been doing this webinar. This is my 41st month in a row of doing a webinar, believe it or not, on topics here. And I see a lot of you out and about, and I appreciate the feedback, good and bad, and other things that people would like to see. But I always want to give you a caveat to this, and that is that I always like to think of this method of attending a webinar, or my webinars, and what I hope you get for them, is I came up with an acronym called the Spicer method. Spicer is a small town in Minnesota, but that's not why we're here. We're talking about actually a method of how you can get content and value from this webinar. So first of all, most of you are here with a strategy. You've strategized this idea of wanting to make greater money or increase this issue or improve that, what have you. You have a business strategy, and you're beginning to plan, and you have an asset, many of you, in a unified database, and you're here for this webinar to get ideas, hopefully, about what you can do. But and whether it's my source or you read blogs or you network, you come up with various different ideas about what makes sense for your business. But ultimately, you have to customize those. Some of the things on this webinar that I say other customers are doing or might suggest to you, you might think is crazy. You might think, well, that's dumb, that will never work for us, and I 100% appreciate that. But please don't allow that to cause you to turn out or turn off or turn away from the whole concept, because there's different ways of getting ideas that you hear from my webinars and applying them. So I just want to make sure that I'm going to throw out some things that might seem foreign to you or not a good idea for your business, but please don't, kind of turn off the whole set of ideas based on that, because you'll always have to apply it to your business. And then once you customize what you want to do, go execute and then try it and reevaluate. So, again, I hope to give you guys some good ideas today, but I know everything won't be perfect, but hopefully you guys will generate some, thoughts within your business. So we're talking about ROI, and ROI is one of the funny things that I hear a lot, and people ask themselves, well, what's the ROI from data? And I'll always ask them, and I always want you guys to consider as you set out on this project, to think of what ROI means to our industry. In many industries, ROI is fairly straightforward. You spend $1, you get $1.20, or that was a 20% return on your investment. In our industry, especially within B2B publishing or other areas where maybe not everything is a direct dollar transaction for a subscriber, there's a few different reasons why data can bring return to your investment. And some of the ones I mentioned on here, everything from some things that might be direct. You have an advertising client and you use your data to come up with some more clever ideas to drive revenue. You might have an increase in web conversions. So today, if you capture 10% of all visitors on the website, and by being more targeted in your messaging and content, you can increase that to 15%, you've achieved a return on that investment. So there's multiple different things on here. Again, subscriber information, growing different revenue sources, lowering cost. A lot of times people set out monetization initiatives without a plan of what it means for success. So again, as you start to move into this world of monetization or ROI, make sure that you've decided to yourself what are some attributable goals. And hopefully I'm going to show you some ideas today of some things that you can consider. But again, don't just think of this very linear way that it's $1 for dollar or $1.10 for $1, okay? All right, so the 5 things I promised you I would cover are the following. Number 1, we'll talk a little bit about how data can help you prepare better sales calls. We'll talk about some of the economic things that people are doing around direct data licensing. We'll talk a little bit about website personalization and some of the economics there. Events, again, we're going to really focus a little bit on making sure that you've got good attendees there and how you can recruit people. And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about the emerging world around leads. So again, hopefully each one of these will give you some ideas that you can turn around and customize, execute them, and then reevaluate what works. Let's talk about better sales calls. So in each of these sections, I'm going to give you a thought to consider and ask yourself that I try to think of when I cover each of these topics. So first of all, when we're talking about sales calls, your agencies that buy your services or corporate buyers or those that evaluate you ask themselves the question about whether or not they want to take your call or have a good first call with you. And basically, I say this. The question you should ask yourself is, when you think about your data, what does your data, your audience data, tell you that makes you different from the next salesperson? People are bombarded by sales calls. It's the next advertiser, the next publisher, the next brand. What makes you stand out? Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple of different ways to think about it. I've used this on previous webinars. I still love the idea of the concept of when you're conducting a first sales call with an advertiser or with an agency, what are you able to tell them that they can't hear from anybody else? Okay, first of all, most salespeople, I think we all would know, go out to LinkedIn. So you're getting ready to make a sales call on an advertiser, and you go out to LinkedIn and you do your research, and you say, oh, he went to this school, or he has this previous jobs. Everybody does that. That's public information. There's nothing differentiated about that in your efforts. However, what I see from really more advanced salespeople in publishing is they go in and they look at their database. Especially in B2B, a great many of your prospects are also readers, or subscribers or attendees. And when they do those activities in a database world, they leave a footprint of what they actually do. In a LinkedIn world or in a public world, they just share with what they want to share. But in your world, you have the ability to go in and provide them with insight and intelligence about their behavior that is unique, that you've captured through your data metrics. So if I say, hey, I'm coming out to a sales call, and I say, look, we've been tracking all of your behavioral information. You read articles about these 5 things. You clicked on 4 things in this area. We've got 700 other people that share a similar interest of you, this, that, and the other thing. It differentiates your message from the guy that said, I looked up on LinkedIn and I noticed you went to Clemson. So remember, use data as a way to make a more compelling and interesting first call in your pre-call research. Okay, number 2, every salesperson I know that goes out to an advertiser looks at their website and looks at their press releases. So this is standard stuff. There's nothing differentiating by the one that goes on the website and does research about the company. New ads, press releases, and things like that. That's fine. You need to do that, but there's nothing different about you. What is different, however, is taking that information and using it and applying it to data you have about your audience. So when I walk into an advertiser and instead of saying, oh, I noticed you're doing you had a recent release about such and such chemical or such and such advancement or such and such discovery, in addition to all of that, I can say, and within my database, I went ahead and done research, and I noticed that we have X number of people that have downloaded content, that have read things online, that have looked at different events of ours, that have read our briefs on that subject, and that targeted list is one that we can put a program to in relation specifically to the press release that you had. So again, the differentiation is not just that you read the website like every other salesperson in this example, but you actually went and applied that insight from your database. Okay, the third thing when it is for better sales calls starts from the beginning with marketing. Last summer I did a webinar about improving the media kit, and it was the most popular one that I've ever done, and it related back to the issue of how organizations are struggling to reposition themselves as audience people, not product people. So a good question that I always ask yourself is, when you're messaging to an advertiser, are you positioning yourself as a series of products, or are you positioning yourself as the industry's leading source of information about the people in that industry? So this is an example on the right of a publisher client of ours called TMB Publications out of Chicago area. They service the PHCP industry, and they've positioned themselves from the beginning of their media kit through their first sales call, through their messaging and presentations, to be an audience leader in a vertical market that has the most intelligence in that area, and their products support that audience, not the reverse. So again, when you're going out and you're positioning yourself in a first sales call, make sure you're not exacerbating the issue of you being an advertising channel by the messaging that you present. Instead, you're better off leading with you being a data source or an industry resource as opposed to a collection of different products. Okay, so those are 3 different ideas specifically to better sales calls. And again, better sales calls produce ROI because the more conversions you get, the more meetings you get over time, it leads to more revenue. Okay, data licensing. Let's get to number 2 here. So a good one of my friends in the publishing world had this comment. He said, I look at my data and ask myself, how can our data help us make money in our sleep? In other words, how can the information that we have turn into revenue without having to do a gigantic project or custom development or custom programming or ad placement or content writing? How can we just make money on our information? And so I want to get your brain thinking a little bit about this because a lot of media companies don't think this way. They think of their data in and of itself as a mechanism to get people to buy ads or services. But let's talk a little bit about the information itself. And there's a lot of economic models out there for you to consider. Things like data.com. If any of you are Salesforce users, you have the ability to purchase a license from a source called data.com, which provides you with additional information about your records. Well, I'd simply ask you the question about yourself. Why can't you provide that same license to your customers about people within your industry? Why would your advertiser, if they have the information about their customers, why can't you be a licensed source like a data.com? Or like a Reach Marketing, which might provide additional list services on behalf of their prospects, but also they have a combination of hygiene services, brokerages, lead gen, append services, and other marketing automation tools that technically exist within your arsenal as well, if you make them available in kind of an integrated data management or marketing platform. So again, that's a second model out there for you to think about and ask yourself, do you have the ability to create that as an asset? Third is LinkedIn. You know, we talked a little bit about LinkedIn before when we talked about preparation, but think about them also as economic model. They do allow, in their case, recruiters the ability to access their data on a license basis and message them directly. So again, I would ask you, why can't you do that? You have a database, you've put it together, you can offer licensing and access in a controlled manner for a purpose other than advertising. Okay, and so we have a couple of customer examples. Our good friends at North Star Travel Media in New York, Jersey area, they position themselves for this data services group, which they position themselves as the most comprehensive data on travel professionals. So by being positioned as a data source, it allows them to offer data services like data management, in other words, maybe managing a customer's database, managing their association membership list, or managing their customer list. They can provide list hygiene services. They can do data append. As you guys probably know, a lot of your customers have limited information on their audience, but you have lots of data. So they might tell you, hey, Brett from Knowledge Marketing is a customer, and you might tell them 40 other pieces of information. I mean, this is how companies like Info Group and these others make money by doing append and enhancement services. They also do merge, purge, and likes, and then they offer complementary services like email marketing delivery and lead nurturing and marketing services. But when you talk about having that core data platform, you can ask yourself, do your customers that are advertisers, whether they're agencies or direct, do they see you as a source of data, or do they see you and data services, or do they see you as a location to place ads? You know, you're both, but what do they see you as? And so a company like North Star has found a way to position themselves as both and make money through data services. Our friends at Meister Media in Ohio really, even though they're in kind of a traditional industry like farming and agriculture, they've carved out a really clever way of making their audience data available to their industry. So they position themselves as a leader of information within within the farm and agriculture space, and they've carved out sections of their database that they can sell to their clients on an annual subscription basis. So again, I might subscribe, if you think about the data.com model, where you pay a few $100s a month, and I'm not 100% sure on Meister's pricing, nor would I disclose that, but think of the concept of how they're allowing a redacted or a scaled back version of some of their information so that industry people can follow the comings and goings of that data on their own basis. Meister doesn't have to provide them anything. They just provide them the user interface, and the customer can go in and look at that information. It's current because Meister has a current source of data in that industry, and they make money without having to provide every recurring service. So again, there's a method of taking some of your information, redacting it out, making it available on a subscription basis, and then making money based on services and data management other than just purely advertising. The last one that's emerging, again, transactions directly oriented to data monetization, is a shopping cart model. And this one's probably a little bit more out there in terms of what people are doing, but they're allowing potentially a model where an advertiser or a salesperson at an advertiser can go in and look up individual contacts on a transaction basis. So maybe I want to go in and I want to verify who's the most current decision maker at one of your prospects. I want a single lead. I don't want to run a lead program. I just want information verification. And I might pay through a shopping cart $100. $100 to verify the most current information about an individual person. And if you think about other lead services and data services out there, they always show you part of a profile, but then you have to pay more information if it's like a contact verification. Well, there's no reason you can't be doing that, or at least considering that. So again, a third, kind of a different model on that area is individual shopping cart oriented transactions for contact verification. It's a little bit out there, but again, some people are doing it, some people don't feel comfortable with it, but again, the bigger question is just asking, is that something that makes sense for you? Okay, website personalization. So again, we're on the subject of different ideas of how all of this data that you've collected can turn itself into a different economic model. So when it comes to website personalization, I always think of this. Your advertiser or your agency partner has infinite number of places to put their website ads. So why yours? What is it about you that makes you a distinct source from anybody else, okay? So here's a couple of things to consider. At a foundational level, more than anything, if you have the database in place and you've got the connections to it, you have the ability to identify and discriminate based on a known user. If you think about it, the value of a known user versus the value of an anonymous user is at the core of this economic model. When you have a known user, whether it's through a cookie or whether it's through a subscription or whether it's through a registration process, what that affords you is the opportunity to increase the amount of data that you capture. It can increase the success of conversions for both you and for them. It gives you the ability to personalize, whether it be content and ads that are relevant to the reader and the advertiser. Once you know, you have a significant advantage over other sites that never convert. Okay? We in publishing and media have a great asset called content that allows us to improve conversion rates and sign-up rates over almost any online source. Other people do it through contests and through gimmicks. You do it through a fair exchange of content for information. And so the question is how you turn around and use it. Again, I always think a visual is, if I were walking into an advertiser, I would say, the reason you should advertise with us and spend money within our website experience is because we have the best ability to convert anonymous to known, and once they're known, we can provide you with a greater piece of information about that lead than anyone else. And again, Google Analytics and all this does anonymous tracking, but you as publishers have the ability to draw a whole bunch of information, behavioral, contextual, etc., and turn it into a discriminating piece of information for leads. So again, visually we talked about when someone comes to the website, are you presenting them something about an ad or content that is unique? So we might go in and say, hey, here comes Brett. We've cookied him from a previous experience. We look at his profile and we know he works for an organization. He's interested in the subject of faucets. He's a C-level executive. His company he manages has $1 billion in revenue. it's a big prospect, he is a subscriber. All of this information allows me to discriminate the placements of my ads. You know, with ad blocking going on and with all of that world that's out there, you have to be cognizant and careful about the content and ads that get played on your site. And everything always says, everywhere you read says, the more closely relevant to the user that the ads and the content are, the less likely they are to block you. So in addition to being able to charge higher advertising rates for ad blocks for known users, you're also protecting your user engagement by making sure the content is more relevant. So again, the theory here, what I see happening is people are breaking down and discriminating website property based on known versus unknown users. And that piece alone, guys, separates you from a lot of other generic sites out there that are focused solely on the metrics related to anonymous Google Analytics. Okay, so get them to be a known user, segment off the site based on that profile, and then increase the rates in those areas where applicable. Okay, let's talk about events. A couple of years ago, everyone realized events were good. You know, it was the way to make money, and a lot of publishers got into the events business hard because they recognized that it had staying power even as the economic model changed a little bit for advertising. So events as a percentage of revenue and profit grew quickly. Well, as you can guess, what happens in that area is it becomes saturated. Now there's umpteen number of events in every industry for every subject. So you got to ask yourself, now that you have competition for events, even within a specific B2B vertical, why should someone spend limited resources they have, whether it's their capital or their time, with your event? And really, when you think about event ROI, again, today people are busy. I've got lots of things to do. I've got lots of different ways to spend my money. I've got lots of different choices. A big driver of what data is doing is to help economize time and effort. So if I'm an advertiser or I'm an attendee and I'm looking at an event, I'm asking myself, what's the ROI for me to be involved? If I'm an advertiser, I want to make sure that there's great attendees. I want the right profile of people. I want to be efficient. So in other words, I don't know about how you guys and your customers are at your events, but most of them, if they're a large event, really want to hone in on, let's say, 10 to 20% of the actual audience that attends. You know, if there's 400 people at an event, even in our industry, when we show up at the conference, we probably want to talk to 40 to 50 people, really. And the question is, do I, as an exhibitor, have to weed through 500 people to get to the ones I want? Well, in theory, you as the provider and the event organizer and the keeper of the data and profiles should be able to help economize my time as an advertiser to get to the people that I want. Simultaneously, among your audience, when you're out recruiting people to attend an event, you should be able to discriminate how you send messaging and event registration based on my profile. So this, you know, whether that's my location, whether that's the type of content I like, whether it's the networking that I might be interested in doing, you've got demographic and behavioral and contextual information about your audience that you should be applying to how you create events. Okay, so a couple of examples would be, you know, most people, when they want to recruit attendees to show up at your event, so you're in that stage, you're in that, you know, if you're following all of Carl Landau's methods for how to get lots of people to your events, and he's got all these techniques that are great, the question you always ask is, what's the hook? What's the catch? And when you look at your readers and your audience, you've got a lot of insights about them that you could be using. Everything from, do they have an affiliation with a particular brand of yours? Are they geographically concentrated? Do they happen to be affiliated with a particular advertiser? So for example, we had one customer that a lot of their, everyone that had read any articles, and I'll show you this example, from one particular advertiser, were sent a note ahead of time saying, this advertiser and this exhibitor is going to be there. We noticed you like their content. Come see them live. You know, so you have to remember that people's behaviors can often tie to how they might attend. So whether it's topical interests, historical attendance, other memberships and affiliations, author identification, these are all ways to improve attendee recruiting based on data. And again, if you improve your attendee recruiting and you can explain your methodology, it makes it more attractive to the advertiser. So again, we might go in and look at geography and say, hey, look, we're planning a geographic location for a particular event. We want to find an area with a high degree of concentration of a particular topic that is particularly relevant to an advertiser, and that message becomes our process by which we recruit attendees and advertisers for that particular area. Okay, so this data can provide you with insight across both avenues. Author affiliations are one that I think of a lot. For example, I went to a conference and I knew that Drew Davis, who speaks a lot on marketing strategies, I read his content on different areas, and when I know he's going to be speaking, I'm more inclined to go. Well, it's the same for you guys. You guys have a lot of experts in your industry that I would bet you people within your readership are constantly reading. They love reading this blog. They love reading these articles. They love reading this author's perspective. The question is can you mine that data to then use that as your recruitment strategy for how you get people to attend an event? So, I mean, this is an example of our customer, Scranton July, is a great customer of ours. If this particular contributing editors, if there's a lot of clicks and reads within their content and they're going to be potentially at the live event, why not use that as a recruiting mechanism to get people to attend? Okay, so again, data is a way to find affiliations, to do additional recruiting ideas other than you came last year, you should come this year. Okay, so look at your data as a mechanism to capture more interest, and then when it comes to the advertiser side, you can also, in this example, say, hey, we have identified X number of people, hundreds and hundreds of people in the database that have clicked on articles with your content, whether they ads or editorial or advertorial content that includes your brand and your names and your products. We want to put together a campaign to, one, get them to attend your event on your behalf, or excuse me, attend our event on your behalf, and then two, give them access, pre-show marketing, to contact some of these people as well. So again, the data gives you insights on how to dig a level deeper in terms of how you do your marketing for events. Okay, last up is lead programs. So leads are everybody's favorite thing. Leads, leads, leads. Everybody's trying to generate leads for everybody else. And everybody promises more and more leads. So again, on the similar vein, what makes your lead program different? So you walk into an advertiser, you walk into an agency, and they ask you about your lead program. What do you tell them about why you're different, other than that you have the industry? And so what can you do that's different? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. Again, the first thing that I recommend, that I see a lot of strategically people are trying to do, is to make the point that through their database, their ability to segment and diversify out people, they're starting from a better qualified list than anyone else. So what I mean by that is, if you think about historically, when the world was CPM oriented, the more you send, the better you are. No one really cared. They just wanted to send as much of their crap to as many people as possible, and whatever dropped out of the bottom of the funnel, they dealt with. Well, the problem with that is that people don't have time to follow up on a whole bunch of unqualified leads. So instead of just randomly sending out requests for lead information or follow-up, there's been a process to try to pre-discriminate who we send it to. So instead of saying we're going to send it to everybody associated with a magazine, that has this title and maybe this geography, we're going to discriminate to say they also are engaged in certain content, they're active email, they're attended certain events, they've got some more profile to them. So by nature, by starting off our initiative with an engaged lead program through our data segmentation, we've allowed ourselves to differentiate from the old CPM model. Secondarily, we're trying to look at leads from a data perspective in more of a campaign format. So once we've proven to an advertiser that no one has the ability to create that initial targeted list like us because of the amount of information we have, the second aspect of it is, what do we do in that process to differentiate ourselves from just we send it out and we send you the lead? So in these lead campaigns, we talk about this with a lot of our clients, is how do you deal with this workflow? You came up with a great list, you sent out 1,000 messages, you had a 20% open rate, a 4% click rate, and a 1% conversion to the point where they filled it out, what do you do with this model? Where do you make money? What do you call it as a lead? What do you charge for, and what level of details do you share? So what we've come up with is really what people are calling 4 different types of responsive leads. So again, a good way to look at this is to say, in the old world, we passed along names and maybe some basic information that we had collected. In today's world, through our data, we've got a lot more choices. So I see companies really trying to break out their leads and their pricing model around these 4 different areas. A basic lead, somebody responds, right? I mean, maybe I'm in the mode of wanting to get as many survey responses as possible or as many downloads as possible, and I'm not really caring who it is. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but usually you're not going to get a premium price for that basic information. Secondarily, they might have a pre-qualified lead to say, hey, there was 100 people that downloaded that information, but we've pre-qualified out half of them because they don't meet your profile, they don't meet this, they don't meet that, they're not this, they're not that. And so those higher qualified leads that meet a criteria might have a higher price point associated with them because we have more information about that individual. The next thing is a nurtured lead, and a nurtured lead is one that's picking up more and more momentum as more and more people are investing in tools like marketing automation or triggered messaging or different sequences of tools. They think that a nurtured lead has a higher price to it. So yes, that person responded, but subsequent to that, we've put them through 4 more contact cycles. So when they get to you downstream, they're more nurtured than the previous. Now again, that's a great strategy. It's great to use your data to do that, but you also deserve the right to charge a premium for that. And then lastly is enhanced lead data. So enhanced lead says, in addition to all the information we've been collecting in this lead cycle, we're enhancing that lead with a bunch of other data that only you as the publisher has. So for example, a basic lead might capture on a form name, title, company, their email address, and some basic question. If you think about your forms, you typically get away with asking 1 or maybe 2 questions in a registration process. And that's fine for the advertiser, but if you also told them for an additional cost, let's say X plus, we'll also provide you with a significant amount of other information we know about that individual that was captured in some other place, not for your purpose. So it could be interest, lead score, nurtured status, phone number, what have you, whatever the particular characteristics that you have of data allows you to discriminate. So again, I think as a differentiation point when you're selling lead programs, you should position your data as a value add. So it might be something like, for our basic lead, it's $80, whatever, per name, plus if we do any design and placement services, design, distribution, and placements, there's a cost associated with that. If we pre-qualify them, we discriminate, maybe some of your leads actually are a higher cost because they meet a different profile, or they're more precious to us, or whatever the characteristic of that. The nurtured lead that goes through maybe a 4-part marketing automation cycle, the names that drop out of that process are more expensive. Maybe it's $160 or 2x cost of the basic lead. And lastly, in addition to that, we're going to enhance that lead with a whole bunch of information that you've collected elsewhere, and that premium lead, that enhanced full lead, is at an even higher cost. So when laying out the value of your lead programs as a differentiator, you should explain how your services and your data allow you to add a premium to that cost. Okay, again, this is the mechanism of saying we monetize, we got our data, we organize it all in one place. How do we monetize it? And again, this is an example of how putting a cost lead structure based on data and service can deliver that for you. Another way to think about it is, I heard a customer mention this too, and I think it's a good technique to think about it is, most people will provide you leads, but they provide what is called contextual leads. And what that means is, we can give you leads as it relates to how we segment based on some different things other than just typical, like, demographic data. What I mean by that is we say, look, the leads that we provided you are our most recent. That's the most recent behavior. Or we gave you leads, only those that engage with certain products within our company, or certain brands within our company. Or we only gave you leads that engaged us within a particular channel. or we only gave you leads of people that we know engage with a specific topic. So the story behind the leads, the context behind the leads is another area that you should be doing. Don't just hand out leads to people without explaining to them the value of what you created and how it was created and what context. Because again, as a salesperson myself, the more information that I could be handed about a lead, the more effective the call will be. If you're just passing me over a name without any context to it, I might still follow up on it, but I don't place as high a value on it. So again, a good message for you guys to say when you're trying to monetize your data in your sales pitches, to use it to say, you know, we as a publisher have the ability to provide leads in a contextual manner. One last tip of advice before we go. I would highly recommend, if you want to find a good way to learn, go out and look at LinkedIn. A lot of you are competing with LinkedIn now, or whether you are or you don't know it, you are competing with them for your advertiser dollars. And a lot of people will say, I just rather use social media. And maybe you don't understand what they're doing, but I would encourage you to go look at it. So LinkedIn has a new program, an end-to-end lead nurturing and lead program suite that I think is really good for you to copy. You know, it's the sincerest form of flattery is to copy something that works really well, and you have the ability to apply your industry expertise to it. But if you go out and look at LinkedIn and the way they approach their lead program, it's actually pretty cool. I think of publishers have the ability to be the LinkedIn of their industry. So if you're in farming, you're the LinkedIn of the farming industry. You know the people, the comings, the goings, the interest, the content. If you apply that model to your mindset about whatever vertical you're in, there's a good way to think of data monetization techniques and lead programs. So go in and do your research on LinkedIn. You might find some cool ideas for yourself about how they do marketing services. They've created a lead accelerator program with lead nurturing. Guys, all this stuff you can do. You can do it just as well as they can, if not better, because you have better content and you have a more precise audience. So I like some of their stuff, these lead accelerators, these lead marketing, these marketing services. I think it's a good model for you guys to apply for yourself because, by the way, through your database, you have as much data about your audience as LinkedIn does about theirs. Okay? So the key points, 5 things, guys. Number 1, when you got your data in place or you're thinking about doing it, ask yourself, get your salespeople involved, and number 1, is there a better way to architect the first sales call? One of our customers tells their top salespeople before preparing for a sales call to tell them who and when and where they're going, and that person in audience development on the data team provides them with some insight. There's no reason you shouldn't be working collaboratively between sales and data to improve that first sales call. Again, we talked about different new ideas about making money in your sleep. You know, can you set a subscription model? Can you do a data licensing model? Can you do a transaction or shopping cart model that allows advertisers to buy things from you from a data perspective that they don't have to get a significant amount of services around? They can do it while you're sleeping. Number 3, make sure your website experiences are segmented. You got all this data. The differentiation you offer in the marketplace, guys, is the ability to create a custom website experience based on data. If you capture the data, but everybody on your website still has the same user experience, I'd ask you why you captured the data in the first place. Number 4, events. Events are a great area. They've made you guys a lot of money, but now they're starting to get saturated. So you got to ask yourself what differentiates you, and it's your ability to use your information to create compelling outcomes for the advertiser or for the attendee that just makes it more efficient and more use of their time. And then lastly, number 5 idea, leads. Everybody promises leads, 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 leads. Everybody says that they have leads, but how do you differentiate how you can deliver and create leads? We talked about 4 different models, maybe an enhanced lead, a basic lead, a nurtured lead. These are different ways that data combined with your content and your efforts can deliver greater monetization in that specific area. So guys, hopefully this has been a quick hit. I'm on 40 minutes. I promised I'd be done close to this time. There's a few questions that I'll send responses to offline, but I really appreciate your guys' attendance. This will be recorded, or has been recorded, so if you want a copy of it, we can we'll send it out in the reply when we follow up, as well as a copy of the presentation will be available as well. So again, everybody, Happy New Year. Hopefully 2016 will be a great year for you, and you know, we'll see you guys all again next month. Take care.